Hello, Hauser from Hauser Reviews is here, and let's get started. So I'm sure every one of us have movies that we hate, but everyone else seems to love, and we love, and everyone else seems to hate. I've gone on record with a couple of those films that I like, but no one else loves, and I don't like, but everyone else seems to adore. We all are very different people, But, I think it's time I bounce back into one of those films that I personally find is a good movie. Flawed, but good. But a lot of others aren't on the same boat. And that is today's review, which is Dante's Peak. Yeah, this film, Now, this got a lot of flack for a couple of reasons. This was released around the point that CGI was starting to become the norm, and there was a lot of every film had to have these big special effects that that sort of deteriorated from the film's quality. But there were this was one of, I think, 4 or 5 volcano movies released that year, so yeah, you could see why it got a bit of flack. But I don't know, I saw it in high school and I thought it was fine. Still enjoy it. Most areas. Anyway, let's go on. So basically it's your formulated volcano story. You've got a scientist, played by Pierce Brosnan, who is assigned to work around to check on a long dormant volcano in America known as Dante's Peak. He befriends the mayor of the town, played by Linda Hamilton, and for his investigations he starts to get concerns about the eruption. However, his colleagues aren't particularly sure, as they don't see anything major. However, if you know how this story is going to go, things start to change drastically, and before they can formulate a plan, boom. Alright, so, okay, let's start off. I will say this, the moments of denial in the story by the other scientists are a bit of a problem. And I guess you can tell that the story is formulaic. But truth be told, this was actually my first volcano movie I've ever seen. In fact, to be honest, I haven't seen that many. The last one I saw was Pompeii. And honestly, I think this movie's a lot better than Pompeii. So yeah, with that said, yes, it is a familiar story. And I will admit, the characters aren't well defined outside of Pierce Brosnan's character. But I think what helps is I think the actors all do a good job in playing the roles in sincerity and seriousness. With some exceptions. I'm not going to name actors, but yeah. With that said, the serious scenes, like when they're around the volcano doing tests around the area, checking for evidence, and of course when the volcano actually does erupt, it's actually those scenes are the best in the movie. It feels good. And the threat of the volcano and the actual third act with the eruption is handled pretty well. I'm also going to give the suspense around it is also pretty good, And certain shots, there are some scenes where it's blatant CGI, but I don't know, there are some cinematography. It's actually pretty good in this, and I admire that. It's shot pretty well. With that said, we do have problems. As I said, the moments of denial in the story do sound, familiar. The CGI, the effects aren't too bad. Some CGI, like with the smoke, especially during the final eruption, yeah, that is just the bland, totally generic CGI that you saw from those movies from the latter half of the 90s and the early 2000s. The humor. There's some scenes of the scientists that, run-of-the-mill humor, particularly the coffee line. I'm not going to go into it, but you know, the goofy moments are very. And then there's this one scene. Oh boy. I'm not sure if people agree with me on this, but when one of the characters do die, they play a certain sound effect. The Wilhelm scream. What's the Wilhelm scream, if you don't know? This. Yep. That iconic scream from Star Wars, and you hear in so many films. Now, in my view, this scream should not have been in the movie. Just play it in silence, you know, and, you know, don't feature the scream. There are certain films I just don't think the Wilhelm scream works. This is one. It's a bit of a nitpick. But it's also a cliche that I sometimes get very, you know, I just don't know whether it makes sense to have it in there. And this is one of the cases, you know. With that said, it's not really my least favorite movie cliche. Far from it. There are some times I like the Wilhelm scream being used, but, you know, in films like this, I don't really think it should have been used. With that said, Dante's Peak, in my view, is a guilty pleasure of mine, and I know there's a few people who are guilty pleasures of this, who think of this film as a guilty pleasure. There's probably a few people on YouTube that actually do like this movie. And, you know, I know people who like this, and I'm part of it. It's not a perfect movie, far from it. But, you know, honestly, for being my first volcano movie I ever saw, I enjoy it. In fact, it's a bit of part of my bargain bin purchases, you know. Yeah. So, with that said, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10 hash stars. Yeah, it's not perfect, but you know what? It's good. I'd say for the first volcano movie for a person to see, fits the bill. Thumbs up. So, what's next? Not sure really, but if I do have some plans going ahead, especially for this next month. There is something coming up I will mention when we get to when we start June, because, well, I'll explain then. But you know, I think I've got. I think it's about time I go back to my. I think it's about time I go back to some requests. But I also want to first do something else. You know, maybe go back to showing off my video game collections. You know, and the next one in store would be my Wii collection. So yeah, those will be either one of the next video. So in the meantime, this is Hazard from Hazard Reviews out, and I'll see you for my next video. Ciao.